Hello.
After 15 years of marriage, I thought I knew my wife. Then I glimpsed her phone for 1 second at a red light. 11 words shattered my world. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about your body. But Dominic wasn't alone. My investigation revealed a shocking truth that would destroy not just my marriage, but 3 other men's lives. My name is Tyler Brennan. I'm 44 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had a pretty decent life. A successful career, a nice house in the suburbs of Portland, and a wife of 15 years who I believed loved me as much as I loved her. Heather and I met in our late 20s, built a life together, weathered the usual storms that come with any long-term relationship. We weren't perfect. Who is? But I genuinely thought we were solid. I adore everything about my wife, but one day, as she was sitting in the car, she unintentionally shattered the illusion. It happened so fast, so absurdly, that for a moment I thought I was imagining things. We were headed home from dinner with friends. I was in the passenger seat, adjusting the air conditioning while Heather drove, her attention divided between the road and her phone at red lights. The spring evening was warm, the kind that makes you roll down the windows and breathe in the promise of summer. I remember thinking how content I felt, full stomach, good company, my wife humming along to some pop song on the radio. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and I caught a flash of something. Not quite a smile, more like a private satisfaction, across her face. At the next red light, she picked up the phone, thumbs quickly tapping out a response. "Who's blowing up your phone?" I asked, more curious than suspicious. "Just work stuff," she replied, placing the phone face down on her lap. The light turned green, and, as she accelerated, the phone slid slightly. That's when it happened. A rookie mistake. Her thumb bumped the screen as she tried to catch it, and suddenly the messages were open, visible for that brief, world-altering second. A name I didn't recognize. Dominic. A message that punched the air from my lungs. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about your body." The car swerved slightly as she hurriedly flipped the phone over, but it was too late. I'd seen it. Those 11 words that rewrote 15 years of marriage. "Who's Dominic?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the sudden thundering in my chest. Heather's reaction told me everything. The momentary wide-eyed panic, quickly masked by irritation. "Just a colleague," she said with forced casualness. "He's a bit of an office flirt. Harmless. Harmless." I repeated, the word tasting like metal in my mouth. "Does your harmless colleague usually talk about your body like that?" Her laugh was sharp, defensive. "Oh my God, Tyler. It's nothing. You're being ridiculous." But her knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and she wouldn't look at me. In that moment, something broke between us. A trust one hadn't even realized was fragile. And with sickening clarity, I understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The rest of the drive home felt like being underwater. Sounds muffled, movements slowed, my thoughts struggling to break the surface. I stared out the window, watching suburban houses blur by, each one harboring its own secrets behind neatly trimmed hedges and drawn curtains. When we pulled into our driveway, Heather killed the engine and turned to me with a practiced smile. "Ready for that nightcap?" she asked, as if the last 15 minutes hadn't happened. I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up her phone from where it lay between us. "Tyler." She lunged for it, but I was already out of the car, standing in our driveway with her unlocked phone in my hand. The messages were right there. Dozens of them. Not just from today, from weeks, maybe months. Each one more explicit than the last. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear that red thing I like. Last meeting ran late. Can we push to 3? Need at least 2 hours with you. Still tasting you." My stomach churned. I looked up to see Heather standing by the car, her face a mask of cold fury rather than shame. "Give me my phone." Her voice was low, controlled. "How long?" I asked. "This is ridiculous. You're invading my privacy over nothing." I laughed, a hollow, unfamiliar sound. "Nothing? You call this nothing?" I held up the phone, its screen illuminating the growing darkness between us. "It's just flirting." "God, Tyler, when did you become so insecure?" Her dismissal hit like a physical blow. Not just the lie, the contempt behind it. "Stop lying to me." I was shouting now, not caring if the neighbors heard. "I can read. Heather, these aren't just flirting. You're sleeping with him." Something shifted in her expression then, calculation replacing defiance. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Fine. It happened once. A mistake. I was going to end it. The ease of the lie was almost impressive. But I'd already scrolled further back, seen the patterns. The working late nights. The weekend seminars. Once, I scrolled to another message. What about same hotel as last time? What about Tuesday was perfect? Her eyes narrowed. You know what? I don't need this. She snatched the phone from my hand, her wedding ring catching the porch light we'd forgotten to turn off that morning. I'm going inside. When you're ready to talk like an adult instead of having a tantrum in the driveway, let me know. She walked away, her heels clicking on the concrete with metronomic precision. The front door opened and closed, leaving me alone in the gathering darkness. I stood there, my world imploding silently around me, and realized with sudden clarity that the woman who had just walked away, the woman I had built my life around, was a stranger to me. I didn't follow Heather inside. Couldn't. The walls of our home, with its carefully chosen furniture and framed vacation photos, suddenly felt like a museum dedicated to a life that never really existed. Instead, I found myself driving aimlessly, muscle memory eventually guiding me to O'Malley's, an unassuming bar downtown where the lighting was dim enough to hide red eyes and the bartenders didn't ask questions. Bourbon neat, I told the balding man behind the counter. He nodded, pouring a generous measure without comment. I was halfway through my second drink when a voice broke through my thoughts. Either someone died or someone lied. I turned to find a woman sliding onto the stool beside mine. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, auburn haircut in a no-nonsense bob. She wasn't smiling, exactly, but there was something knowing in her expression. What makes you say that? I asked. She shrugged, signaling the bartender. 20 years in family law. I recognized the look. You're a lawyer? Divorce attorney. She extended her hand. Rebecca Mitchell. I shook it automatically. Tyler Brennan. So which is it, Tyler Brennan? Death or deceit? I took another sip of bourbon, feeling it burn a path down my throat. Deceit. Rebecca nodded, thanking the bartender for her martini. Wife or husband? Wife. Let me guess. You caught her. She denied it. Then when denial didn't work, she blamed you. I stared at her, the bourbon glass frozen halfway to my lips. How did you? Like I said, 20 years of practice. She took a deliberate sip of her martini. And let me guess again, she made you feel like you were crazy for suspecting her. Like you were the problem. The accuracy of her assessment made my chest tight. It was a text message from a guy named Dominic. Explicit. I swallowed hard. When I confronted her, she laughed at me. Called me insecure. Rebecca's mouth tightened. Classic gaslighting. Make you doubt what you see with your own eyes. Gaslighting. Manipulating someone into questioning their reality. She studied me over the rim of her glass. And I'm betting this isn't the first time, is it? Just the first time you caught her red-handed. I thought back to other moments. Odd phone calls, unexplained absences, defensiveness over simple questions. How many times had Heather made me feel unreasonable for asking where she'd been? You think she's done this before? Rebecca didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked, what are you going to do now? The question hung between us, heavy with implications. What was I going to do? Go home. Pretend tonight never happened. Try to work through it, while Heather continued seeing Dominic behind my back? I don't know, I admitted. Yes, you do. Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. You just haven't accepted it yet. She was right. Deep down, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I just wasn't sure I had the strength to do it. People like your wife, Rebecca continued, they don't cheat because something's missing. They cheat because they think they can get away with it. Her words hit me like a physical blow, crystallizing something I hadn't been able to articulate. Heather wasn't sorry. She was sorry she got caught. I need proof, I heard myself say. More than just messages. Rebecca nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. That's where it always starts. I left O'Malley's with Rebecca's business card in my pocket and a plan forming in my mind. Not a good plan, perhaps, certainly not an honorable one. But then, honor seemed like a luxury I could no longer afford. I drove to my friend Mike's place, calling him from the driveway. It was nearly midnight, but he answered on the second ring. Tyler, everything okay? No, I said simply. Can I crash on your couch tonight? 20 minutes later, we were sitting in his kitchen. Mike listened silently as I laid out the evening's events, his expression darkening with each detail. "That's messed up, man," he said when I finished. "What are you going to do?" "I need to know everything," I replied. "How long it's been going on? If Dominic is the only one." Mike leaned back, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "You think there are others?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Until that moment, I hadn't considered the possibility. But now, "I don't know," I admitted. "But I need to find out." Mike was quiet for a moment, then said, "You remember Jake Cullen from college? Works in digital security now. Specialized in electronic forensics or something." I vaguely recalled a lanky guy with glasses who'd always been surrounded by computer equipment. "You still in touch?" Mike nodded. "He owes me a favor. Big one." The next morning, after a restless night on Mike's couch, I met Jake at a nondescript coffee shop downtown. He looked older, more polished, but still had that intense focus I remembered from college. "Mike, fill me in," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Sorry about your situation." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Here's what I can do," Jake continued, all business. "If you have access to her accounts, email, social media, cloud storage, I can help you extract and analyze the data. Text messages too, if you can get her phone. It's not exactly—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Conventional. But neither is cheating on your spouse." "Is it legal?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I cared anymore. Jake's expression was measured. "You're married. You share devices, accounts, a home. Gray area at worst." That was enough for me. "What do you need?" "Passwords, if you have them. Access to devices. And you need to be prepared for what we might find." His eyes held mine. "Some things you can't unknow, Tyler." I thought about Heather's dismissive laugh in our driveway, the cold calculation in her eyes as she called me insecure. "I already can't unknow what I saw last night," I said. "At least this way, I'll have the full picture." Jake nodded. "One more thing. Don't let her know you're suspicious. Act normal. If she realizes you're investigating, she'll delete evidence." The thought of going home, pretending everything was fine while Heather continued to lie to my face, made my stomach turn. But I understood the necessity. "I'll text her," I decided. "Say I stayed at Mike's after having too many drinks. Then I need time to cool off." "Good," Jake approved. "Buy us some time while I set things up." As I drove back to Mike's, a strange calm settled over me. The pain and shock were still there, but now channeled into purpose. Heather thought she was the clever one, that I was too trusting, too stupid, to see through her deception. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Jake worked faster than I expected. 3 days after our coffee shop meeting, he called me to his home office, a converted garage filled with monitors, servers, and equipment I couldn't begin to identify. "You better sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair beside his workstation. I'd been staying at Mike's, telling Heather I needed space to process. She'd alternated between angry texts accusing me of overreacting and sweet messages reminiscing about our early days together. Classic manipulation that might have worked before, but now just strengthened my resolve. "How bad is it?" I asked, bracing myself. Jake's expression was grim. "Worse than you thought." He turned one of his monitors toward me. "Dominic isn't the only one." On screen was a spreadsheet with meticulous detail. Names, dates, locations, message excerpts. 3 columns of data, each with a different man's name at the top. Dominic, Scott, Jason. 3. My voice sounded strange, distant. "That I can confirm," Jake nodded. "All ongoing, overlapping relationships. Been going on for at least 14 months, based on the earliest communications I found." 14 months. Over a year of deception, of coming home to me after being with them, of lying to my face day after day. "The patterns are consistent," Jake continued, professional despite the personal nature of what he was showing me. "Hotel meetings during work events. Extended lunch breaks. Weekend seminars that don't exist." He clicked to another screen, a calendar view with color-coded entries. "Blue is Dominic, usually Tuesdays and every other Thursday. Green is Scott, mainly Fridays. Red is Jason, more sporadic, but typically when you travel for work." I stared at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, laid out in cold, clinical detail. The systematic nature of it was almost impressive, if it wasn't so devastating. "There's more," Jake said quietly. "Texts. email exchanges, some explicit photos. Show me, I said, my voice hardening. Tyler, man, you don't need to. Show me. Jake hesitated, then opened another folder. I forced myself to look at everything. Every message, every image, every lie. I needed to see it all, to burn it into my memory, so there would be no wavering, no moment of weakness where I might convince myself it wasn't as bad as I thought. It was worse. She has them on rotation, I said finally, a strange calm settling over me. Like a schedule. Jake nodded uncomfortably. Looks that way. And they don't seem to know about each other. That detail caught my attention. They don't know. Based on the communications, no. She's been careful to keep them separate. Something shifted inside me then, anger crystallizing into resolve. Heather had constructed an elaborate web of deception, managing multiple affairs with the precision of a project manager. She'd made me the fool in my own marriage while maintaining her image as the perfect wife. I want it all, I told Jake. Every text, every email, every picture. And I want it organized by person, by date, everything. Jake studied me, concern evident in his expression. What are you planning, Tyler? I thought of Heather's dismissive laugh when I confronted her, the ease with which she'd try to make me doubt what I'd seen with my own eyes. Justice, I said simply. I'm planning justice. As I drove back to Mike's place, clutching a flash drive containing irrefutable proof of my wife's betrayal, a plan began forming in my mind. Heather thought she was clever, that she was in control. She was about to learn how wrong she was. For the first time since seeing that message on her phone, I smiled. Not with joy, with determination. I didn't return home immediately. I couldn't face Heather yet. Not until my plan was fully formed. Instead, I holed up at Mike's for another 2 days, poring over the evidence Jake had compiled. You're starting to scare me, Mike commented, watching me organize files on my laptop. You've barely slept. I'll sleep when this is over, I muttered, not looking up. The truth was, I never felt more awake, more focused. The shock and pain had hardened into something else. A cold, clear determination that kept me going when exhaustion threatened to overtake me. Rebecca, the divorce attorney from the bar, had become part of my inner circle. When I called her with what Jake had found, she agreed to meet with us immediately. This is comprehensive, she said, reviewing the files in Mike's living room. Most spouses don't have half this much evidence. What are my options? I asked. Rebecca leaned back, considering. Legally, with this evidence and Oregon's infidelity clause, you're entitled to a favorable divorce settlement. But I'm guessing that's not all you're asking. She was right. A favorable settlement wasn't enough. Not for the systematic humiliation Heather had subjected me to. I want her to lose everything, I said, my voice steady. Not just money. Her dignity. Her control. The careful image she's built. Mike shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but Rebecca didn't flinch. Then you need to dismantle her support system, she said matter-of-factly. These men, they're part of it, whether they know it or not. They don't know about each other, I clarified. Jay confirmed it. A slow smile spread across Rebecca's face. That's your leverage. The plan came together over the next 24 hours. Rebecca drafted divorce papers, citing infidelity with multiple named parties. Jake compiled dossiers on each of Heather's lovers. Dominic, a sales executive at a rival company. Scott, her yoga instructor. Jason, our neighbor's younger brother who'd moved to town last year. None of them know they're sharing her. I confirmed, reviewing the information. Each thinks he's the only one. That changes tomorrow, Rebecca said grimly. I finally texted Heather that evening, saying I was ready to talk. That I'd be home the next day, Friday, around 6 p.m. She responded immediately with a string of relieved messages, claiming she missed me, that we could work through this misunderstanding. What she didn't know was that Friday at 4 p.m., each of her lovers would receive an identical email from an anonymous account, containing proof of Heather's other relationships and an invitation to come to our house at 6:30 p.m. to discuss the situation. Meanwhile, I had one more call to make. Heather's parents had always adored me, believed wholeheartedly in our marriage. They deserved to know the truth, not a sanitized version Heather would inevitably craft. This feels extreme, Mike said as I prepared to call my in-laws. Is it? I countered. More extreme than carrying on 3 separate affairs for over a year? more extreme than laughing in my face when I caught her. Mike held up his hands in surrender. I'm not judging, man. Just be careful. There's no coming back from this. I don't want to come back, I said, realizing as I spoke that it was absolutely true. I want to burn it all down and walk away. The call with Heather's parents was predictably difficult. Her mother cried. Her father, a retired judge with an uncompromising sense of right and wrong, asked detailed questions, his voice growing colder with each answer I provided. We'll be there, he said finally. 6 o'clock. As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. Tomorrow, Heather's carefully constructed house of cards would collapse spectacularly. The thought should have brought me satisfaction, but instead, I felt only a grim resolve, and beneath it, a hollow ache for the life I had believed in so completely. Get some sleep, Rebecca advised, gathering her things. Tomorrow will be intense. I nodded, knowing sleep would be impossible. How could I rest when tomorrow would be the day I finally reclaimed control of my shattered life? Friday arrived with a strange, electric anticipation. I spent the morning in Mike's apartment, reviewing the plan one final time with Rebecca and Jake. Remember, Rebecca cautioned, stay calm no matter what she does. The moment you lose your composure, you lose control of the situation. I nodded, tucking the flash drive containing all the evidence into my pocket. I won't lose control. Not this time. At 5:30 p.m., I pulled into our driveway. The house looked exactly as I'd left it days ago, a monument to the life I'd thought we shared. Inside, I could see lights on, movement in the kitchen. Heather, preparing for my return. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. She was waiting in the entryway when I opened the door, her face a perfect mask of concerned affection. Tyler, she said, stepping forward to embrace me. I'm so glad you're home. I sidestepped her hug, watching her expression flicker with annoyance before settling back into practiced concern. We need to talk, I said. Of course, she agreed, gesturing toward the living room. I made your favorite dinner. I thought we could. I know everything, Heather. She paused, confusion crossing her features. What do you mean? Dominic, Scott, Jason. I enunciated each name clearly, watching her face. All of them. For over a year. The shock in her eyes was genuine, but brief, quickly replaced by calculation. She opened her mouth, no doubt to launch into denials, but the doorbell interrupted her. That would be your parents, I said calmly. My parents. Now real panic flashed across her face. Why are they? I invited them. They deserve to know why their son-in-law is filing for divorce. Her face hardened. You had no right. Actually, I had every right. I moved past her to open the door, just like I had every right to invite them. Heather's parents stood on the porch, their faces grim. Her father, Judge Robert Wilson, looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and resignation. Her mother, Eleanor, couldn't meet my eyes. Come in, I said. Heather was just about to explain why she's been sleeping with 3 different men behind my back. Eleanor let out a small gasp. Robert simply nodded, as if having his worst fears confirmed. Heather stood frozen in the hallway, her careful facade crumbling as her parents entered. For perhaps the first time in our marriage, she seemed genuinely at a loss for words. What is this? She finally managed, her voice tight with anger. Some kind of intervention? No, I replied evenly. It's the truth. Something you've never been particularly familiar with. The doorbell rang again. Heather's eyes darted to the door in confusion. And that, I continued, would be Dominic, or Scott, or Jason. I invited them too. All color drained from Heather's face as understanding dawned. You didn't, she whispered. I smiled without humor. I did. And now we're all going to have a nice, honest conversation about exactly who you are. The next 30 minutes were chaos. Dominic arrived first, his confident swagger faltering when he saw Heather's parents. Scott and Jason arrived within minutes of each other, creating a tableau of confusion in our living room as each man gradually realized he wasn't the only one who'd received an invitation. What is this? Dominic demanded, looking from me to Heather. Sit down, I said calmly, gesturing to the sofa. All of you. Remarkably, they complied. 3 men who'd been sleeping with my wife, now taking direction from me. Heather remained standing, her eyes darting between her lovers and her parents, panic rising visibly with each passing second. "Tyler, please," she finally said, her voice hitching. "We can talk about this privately. Like you talk privately with Dominic." I countered. "Or Scott. Or Jason." The three men exchanged glances, comprehension slowly dawning. "You know each other?" Scott asked, looking between Dominic and Jason. "No," Jason replied slowly. "We've never met." I turned to the large TV on the wall and connected my laptop. The spreadsheet Jake had created appeared on screen. Dates, times, locations. Color-coded by lover. 14 months of deception laid bare in clinical detail. "For over a year," I explained to the stunned room, "my wife has been maintaining relationships with all three of you. Simultaneously. On a rotation." Heather's mother made a small, distressed sound. Her father's face had turned to stone. "This is insane," Heather snapped, finding her voice. "You're violating my privacy, humiliating me in front of privacy." I laughed, the sound harsh even in my own ears. That's rich coming from the woman who's been lying to everyone in this room. I clicked to the next screen, text messages between Heather and Dominic, discussing their Tuesday routine. "Look familiar?" I asked Dominic. His face darkened. "You said your husband was clueless," he said to Heather. "He was," she blurted, then immediately realized her mistake. I continued through the evidence methodically, showing each man what Heather had said about him to the others, revealing how she'd coordinated their meetings to never overlap, how she'd used the same hotel room with different men on different days. The most damning were her messages about me, mocking, contemptuous texts about her boring husband who suspected nothing. With each revelation, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier, charged with anger and betrayal. Judge Wilson finally broke his silence. "Heather," he said, his judicial voice cutting through the tension, "is this true? All of it?" For a moment, I thought she might still try to deny it. But faced with irrefutable evidence and 5 betrayed faces, something in Heather finally cracked. "Fine," she shouted. "Yes, it's all true. I was bored. Is that what you want to hear? That perfect, dependable Tyler wasn't enough? That I needed more?" Her confession hung in the air, brutal in its honesty. "Well, congratulations," she continued, turning to me with venom. "You've ruined everything. Are you happy now?" I looked at my wife, this stranger I'd shared a bed with for 15 years, and felt a surprising sense of calm. "No, Heather," I said quietly. "I'm not happy. But for the first time in a long time, I'm free." I handed her an envelope containing the divorce papers Rebecca had prepared. "We're done," I said simply. And unlike you, I only needed to say it once. The next few hours unfolded like scenes from a movie I was watching rather than living. One by one, Heather's lovers left, Dominic with a string of curses, Scott with an awkward apology directed at me, Jason with silent fury. Heather's parents stayed longer, her father speaking to me privately in the kitchen. "I always thought of you as a son," Judge Wilson said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Not in me, but in the situation, in his daughter. Whatever happens next, you'll always be family to us." The gesture nearly broke me. I'd been running on anger and determination for days, but his simple kindness cracked my armor. After they left, Heather and I faced each other across our living room. The house felt cavernous, filled with the ghosts of what we'd once been to each other. "You've destroyed everything," she said, her voice dull. "Humiliated me in front of everyone I care about." "No, Heather," I replied, fatigue weighing down each word. "You did that yourself." "So righteous," she sneered, a flash of the old defensive anger returning. "So perfect. Tell me, did it feel good? Getting your revenge?" I considered her question seriously. Did it feel good? The confrontation had brought no joy, no satisfaction, only a hollow vindication. It wasn't about feeling good, I finally answered. It was about the truth. Everyone deserved to know who they were really dealing with. She laughed bitterly. "The truth. As if you've never lied." "Not like this," I said quietly. "Never like this." Heather's shoulders slumped, the fight visibly draining from her. For a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of something authentic, regret, perhaps, or simply exhaustion. "What happens now?" she asked. "You have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings," I said, repeating the terms Rebecca had outlined. "The divorce will proceed with or without your cooperation." The prenup is clear on infidelity. And that's it. 15 years. Over just like that. The question staggered me with its audacity, as if I had ended things just like that, rather than her systematic betrayal over more than a year. It was over the moment you decided I wasn't enough. I told her. You just didn't bother to tell me. I turned and walked upstairs to the guest bedroom, where I'd be sleeping until she left. Behind me, I heard what might have been a sob, but I didn't look back. For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I felt nothing for Heather. Not anger, not love, not even hate. Just a profound emptiness that someday, I hoped, would be filled with something better. 6 months passed like a strange dream. The divorce proceeded swiftly, thanks to Rebecca's expertise and the overwhelming evidence of Heather's infidelity. The prenuptial agreement I'd almost forgotten about proved invaluable, protecting my assets and the house I'd largely paid for. Heather didn't fight the terms. Whatever defiance had fueled her that night of confrontation seemed to have burned out, leaving behind a woman I barely recognized, subdued, almost meek during our brief interactions through lawyers. I heard through mutual friends that she'd left Portland, moving to Seattle for a fresh start. None of her lovers went with her. Mike insisted on throwing me a divorce finalized dinner once the papers were signed. Rebecca came too, no longer as my attorney, but as a friend who'd guided me through the darkest period of my life. To freedom, Mike toasted, raising his glass. To truth, Rebecca added. To whatever comes next. I finished, surprised to find I meant it. After dinner, Rebecca and I walked along the waterfront, the spring air carrying the promise of renewal. Any regrets? She asked. About how you handle things? I considered the question carefully. No, I answered finally. The truth needed to come out, not just for me, but for everyone involved. Her parents. Those men who didn't know they were being manipulated. Sometimes healing can only start after everything's been exposed to light. Rebecca nodded, understanding in her eyes. And now, what's next for Tyler Brennan? Honestly, I don't know. I smiled, the expression feeling more natural than it had in months. That's the exciting part. 3 weeks later, I sold the house. Too many memories haunted those rooms, both the good ones that now felt tainted and the bad ones that still kept me awake some nights. The new place was smaller, closer to downtown, a fresh space for a fresh start. Judge Wilson called on the day I moved in. He and Eleanor had maintained contact, defying Heather's attempts to turn them against me. Their loyalty was an unexpected gift in the aftermath of destruction. We're in town next weekend, he said. Eleanor's insisting on bringing you a housewarming gift. I'd like that, I told him, meaning it. As I unpacked boxes in my new living room that evening, I found the old photo albums I'd almost left behind. 15 years of memories with a woman who had turned out to be a stranger. I considered throwing them away, but decided against it. Those years had happened. They were part of my story, even if the ending wasn't what I'd expected. Instead, I placed them on a high shelf, acknowledgement rather than shrine. Then I opened my laptop and began researching photography classes, something I'd always wanted to explore but had never made time for. The future stretched before me, unburdened by deception, rich with possibility. For the first time in a very long time, I was truly free.
Bye.